Welcome to day 16 of Advent, using our Jesse tree for our Advent devotional as we rehear those Old Testament stories about God and God's work with God's people leading up to the birth of Jesus Christ. We left off last time as we heard about Jesse and his sons, that God selected a king from Jesse's sons. And the king that he selected was King David. David was a young man at that time, probably just a teenager, and he was shepherding the sheep, not even in the consideration for being shown to Samuel as an option to be chosen as king. But God looked into his heart and knew that David was the one. So David was also a musician, known for playing the harp. There's a story shortly after this when David has been anointed king, but the current king Saul doesn't know about that. Samuel anoints David and then walks away, and David does the things that David does for a while until he's deemed ready to take on the mantle of kingship. And so King Saul is in a funk. He's really depressed, and one of his advisors decides that if David comes and plays the harp for him, that will make him happier. And so David comes and plays his harp for Saul. And yet Saul does not know that this is his anointed successor. But the story that we know most about David, perhaps, is the one from Sunday school. The one about David and Goliath. So we find that story in the 17th chapter of 1 Samuel. I should have printed these a little larger. They're a little hard for me to see. So 1 Samuel 17, we're going to start at verse 21. David was up at the crack of dawn, and having arranged for someone to tend his flock, took the food and was on his way just as Jesse had directed him. So he is bringing food to his brothers who are serving as soldiers. He arrived at the camp just as the army was moving into battle formation, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines moved in position, facing each other battle ready. David left his bundles of food in the care of a sentry, ran to the troops who were deployed, and greeted his brothers. While they were talking together, the Philistine champion, Goliath of Gath, stepped out from the front lines of the Philistines and gave his usual challenge. David heard him. So this has been going on for a while, that Goliath will taunt the forces. The Israelites, to a man, fell back the moment they saw the giant, totally frightened. The talk among the troops was, "Have you ever seen anything like this? This man openly and defiantly challenging Israel. The man who kills the giant will have it made. The king will give him a huge reward, offer his daughter as a bride, and give his entire family a free ride." David, who was talking to the men standing around him, asked, "What's in it for the man who kills the Philistine and gets rid of this ugly blot on Israel's honor? Who does he think he is anyway, this uncircumcised Philistine taunting the armies of God alive?" They told him what everyone was saying about what the king would do for the man who killed the Philistine. Eliab, his older brother, heard David fraternizing with the men and lost his temper. "What are you doing here? Why aren't you minding your own business? tending that scrawny flock of sheep. I know what you're up to. You've come down here to see the sights, hoping for a ringside seat at a bloody battle." "What is it with you?" replied David. "All I did was ask a question." Ignoring his brother, he turned to someone else, asked the same question, and got the same answer as before. The things David was saying were picked up and reported to Saul. Saul sent for him. "Master," said David, "don't give up hope. I'm ready to go and fight this Philistine." Saul answered David, "You can't go and fight this Philistine. You're too young and inexperienced, and he's been at this fighting business since before you were born." David said, "I've been a shepherd tending sheep for my father. Whenever a lion or bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I'd go after it, knock it down, and rescue the lamb. If it turned on me, I'd grab it by the throat, wring its neck, and kill it. Lion or bear, it made no difference. I killed it. And I'll do the same to this Philistine pig who is taunting the troops of God alive. God, who delivered me from the teeth of the lion and the claws of the bear, will deliver me from this Philistine." Saul said, "Go, and God help you." Then Saul outfitted David as a soldier in armor. He put his bronze helmet on his head and belted his sword on him over the armor. David tried to walk, but he could hardly budge. David told Saul, "I can't even move with all of this stuff on me. I'm not used to this." And he took it all off. Then David took his shepherd's staff, selected 5 smooth stones from the brook, and put them in the pocket of his shepherd's pack, and with his sling in his hand, approached Goliath. As the Philistine paced back and forth, his shield bearer in front of him, he noticed David. He took one look down on him and sneered. A mere youngster, apple-cheeked and peach-fuzzed. The Philistine ridiculed David. "Am I a dog that you come after me with a stick?" And he cursed him by his gods. "Come on," said the Philistine. "I'll make roadkill of you for the buzzards. I'll turn you into a tasty morsel for the field mice." David answered, "You come at me with sword and spear and battle axe. I come at you in the name of God of the angel armies, the God of Israel's troops, whom you curse and mock. This very day God is handing you over to me. I'm about to kill you, cut off your head, and serve up your body and the bodies of your Philistine buddies to the crows and the coyotes. The whole earth will know that there's an extraordinary God in Israel. And everyone gathered here will learn that God doesn't save by means of sword or spear. The battle belongs to God. He's handing you to us on a platter." That roused the Philistine, and he started toward David. David took off from the front line, running toward the Philistine. David reached into his pocket for a stone, slung it, and hit the Philistine hard in the forehead, embedding the stone deeply. The Philistine crashed face down in the dirt. That's how David beat the Philistine, with a sling and a stone. He hit him and killed him. No sword for David. Then David ran up to the Philistine and stood over him, pulled the giant sword from its sheath, and finished the job by cutting off his head. When the Philistines saw that their great champion was dead, they scattered, running for their lives. The men of Israel and Judah were up on their feet shouting. They chased the Philistines all the way to the outskirts of Gath and the gates of Ekron.